as a fairly new act myself, we often fall in the trap of like overly rehearsing our material to make sure our delivery is absolutely perfect and we don't slip up on a bit of material because then the punchline's ruined. And that means we're basically not focusing on anything else in our performance. And one of the vital things that most new acts miss is how important the opening to their set is. And I don't mean your first joke. I mean, what are you going to do to introduce yourself to the audience that makes you present in the room? Because a great opener can either make or break your entire set. So in this video, I thought I'd show you a few of the openers I've used on stage, also a few techniques that I've learned along the way, and a few openers that I've seen other acts do. Okay, so the first clip I want to show you is from a gig that I did in Watford for my good friend Des, who runs Just Another Comedy Club. If you've never done a gig for Just Another, I highly recommend it. Those nights are always fucking mental. And this one was absolutely no exception. For context, it was a good room. It was a very intimate room, which is always fun as a new act. Rooms like this sort of force you to actually develop your personality on stage rather than just relying on your material, which I think is a great skill for any new act to develop. Now, I was on in the second half, which is great because it gives me enough time to think of an opener. And there happened to be two young girls, maybe, I don't know, 18, 19 years old, right at the front that were becoming sort of louder and louder. I think they'd just finished a whole bottle of wine, so they were getting a little bit rowdy. Now, Des, being the great MC he is, found an amazing solution, which was basically to just sit right next to them and like sort of supervise them. Anyway, I think I was the only one that sort of noticed this, and I thought it was very funny, so I put it in my opener. Can I just say, right, I love that he's just sat there like a teacher supervising. And what I noticed at the back, right, is your shoulder, right, touched Des for a millisecond, and you had to just shiver away. Now, because these girls had been drinking for a little while, I could see that they were giving acts maybe 10, 15 seconds before talking amongst themselves and being a little bit disruptive. So my strategy was to basically engage with them straight away as soon as I went on stage, because then if I could get their attention, I had control of the entire room. Which brings me to my first technique on how to make a great opener. Talk about what's going on in the room. Now, a lot of acts at all different kinds of levels will talk about how the room looks. Now, to me, that's very easy and often very lazy. Now, unless you thought of something so unique and interesting and so funny from your own perspective about the room that no one else has thought of, which, let's face it, as a new act, that's not going to happen. You find that acts often say the same thing or sort of something like a similar theme about how the room looks. There's only so many things you can say. Now, what I think is more interesting is actually talking about the dynamics, right? The dynamics of the room, which is obviously what I've done here. Addressing the elephant in the room is going to make people more comfortable with you being on stage, but also showing that you have been listening. Okay, let's go to the next clip. So this was a gig in Luton. I think it's called the Comedy Bar. Great gig, really fun one to do. For this particular gig, I was booked last minute to actually replace an act that dropped out, which means the gig had already started before I even got there. So obviously in this case, I couldn't do an opener about the social dynamics in that room because I hadn't been in the room. And it got to the point where I got on stage and I didn't have an opener. Gosh, that's a lot of white people. Even I'm uncomfortable, all right? So the second technique is, if you don't have anything else, react to the room, right? This was me coming on stage and I didn't have anything. So it was my first reaction of stepping into that room, which is really nice and organic. Now, I've seen a lot of very experienced acts do this when they're not actually meant to be booked that night and they might turn up last minute. They've never seen or even been to the venue before. And I've seen some amazing reactions to what they see when they step out. And obviously, it's completely improv. And as long as the audience can see that this is you genuinely entering a room that you've never been and this is your kind of organic reaction, it can be very funny without really having to do much. And you'll notice in that clip, it's not even what I said that was funny. It was just really the reaction of me sort of looking around. Okay, so all the openers that I've shown you so far have some element of improv, but what if maybe you're a one-liner comedian and you don't want to do improv? Your opener can be a joke, but you just want to make that joke feel personalized for that audience, right? Here's a clip of a comedy night I did with my mate James in Oxford.
Thank you, Oxford. Oxford, there was controversy in Oxfordshire, wasn't there, in the news? Did you see it? There was a big pile of rubbish. Does anyone else go to Oxford Brooks?
You'll see a lot of experienced acts sort of make jokes about the location, especially if they're touring. Now, the level up with this, I think, is not only obviously making a joke about where you are, but also joining in on the sort of the local banter. And obviously in this case, the local banter, right, is that Oxford Brooks is kind of the shithole in Oxford, right? Okay, now I want to talk about when openings are not possible at a gig. Now, this was kind of a charity gala night. There was like music, there was poetry, and obviously there was comedy. Now, the comedy was meant to be in the first half of the show, right? Unfortunately for me, the MC forgot that I was basically closing the comedy segment part of this gig. So I found the MC and I was like, I'm sorry, I think you forgot to call me up. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm so sorry. This is my first time MCing. How about I put you on after the poetry? Which I was like, okay, this is going to be a weird gig. The charity was for like a children disability charity, and the poetry was very moving, very emotional. And just before my name was called, I was thinking, shit, what do I say? What's going to be my opener? Because I had so many ideas of some of the edgy stuff that I could do. And I thought, I'm going to have to play it safe. I don't think I can do an opener this time. And honestly, in this case, that was a brilliant call, because if you don't know how the audience is going to react to you, it is not worth the risk. And this audience were not prepared already for comedy generally. So my opener for this one is I literally went up on stage. I said, hi, my name is Dylan. I'm going to tell a few jokes. Let's see how you take them, right? And after every joke, I kind of went back to the room and just sort of reviewed how it was going with them, right? And it was kind of sort of fun. And that's what enabled me to make my material darker and darker and do the things that I was going to do if I obviously was in the first half.
It gets worse than that. I'm actually half French as well. Anyone here today to stand back? No? I did see a baby earlier, so you never know.
Right, so the final clip I want to show you, right, is a more polished clip from a friend of mine, great act, Wilson Milton. And I want to show you this clip specifically is because Wilson is a fucking great opener. In fact, he opens a lot of gigs because people want him to open.
Hello! It's shorter than Jonathan, clearly. Yeah, I'm wearing football shorts and flip-flops, deal with it. I've never gigged in flip-flops before, but I've also never gigged barefoot, so I'm gonna do two in one go. Hold those for me, mate. Yeah, found those on the tube. I didn't really. She's got a fetish for it, I think. She couldn't wait to take those flip-flops off me.
Now, aside from this just being a great opener generally, I think there's a few things that Wilson does that just really polishes his opener. First of all, Wilson, as you can see from this very small clip, is a low status act. He's coming on stage, he's in his fucking flip-flops, he doesn't care. And this particular room was very high status, right? Very middle class audience. I think it was right in the center of Hammersmith. And what he's doing with his opening is actually he's bringing down the whole status of that entire room, right? He's bringing them down to his own level. And he does this by physically handing his flip-flops to a member of the audience. Not only is this like insanely playful, but what you're also doing is using a prop which is creative, it's interesting, it's something different. Props are just so underrated. People see props as stupid little cringe-worthy things you can do, but if you can do it right and it fits with your act, perfect. Now, in that opening 25 seconds that Wilson did his opener, he has introduced himself. He said, look, I'm fucking around, I'm here to fuck around, I'm being playful, and which sets him up perfectly for the kind of material that he's going to do. But I think the biggest thing that he did with his opener is that he changed the room to suit him, and that is a very pro move. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. If you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing, and good luck with your next opener. See you soon.